Dr. Malcolm Reid had spent years chasing the impossible. It had started with a single anomaly, an event so bizarre, so inexplicable, that it defied everything he understood about physics. The reading had appeared during his early years as a researcher, buried deep in a standard quantum field analysis. A distortion, a brief rupture in measurable space-time, appearing for only a fraction of a second before vanishing entirely. Most scientists dismissed it as an equipment failure. Some called it noise. But Malcolm knew better. He had rerun the calculations hundreds of times. The rupture wasn't a mistake. It was real. Something had cracked, however briefly, between realities, and Malcolm had seen it. Since that moment, he had been obsessed. His colleagues told him to drop it. His funding wavered as universities labeled his research theoretical nonsense. But Malcolm didn't care. That fleeting anomaly had changed him. And tonight, after years of research, sleepless nights, and endless calculations, would finally lead to proof. His lab, hidden beneath layers of secrecy, was quiet, save for the hum of machinery. His device, a towering assembly of concentric rings, pulsating with controlled electromagnetic fields, stood ready in the center of the room. Malcolm moved with precision, adjusting dials and monitoring the feed. Every variable was accounted for. Every safeguard was in place. He initiated the sequence. The rings began to spin, energy crackling, the air warping as space itself seemed to bend within the core of his machine. His heart pounded. He saw it. The shimmer in reality itself. Just like before. This time, he wouldn't let it disappear. Then, everything went wrong. The power surge was too strong. The readings spiked, his calculations unraveled in real time, warnings flashing across his console. The shimmer intensified. The ground beneath him tilted, and Malcolm had just enough time to realize the machine wasn't opening a controlled doorway. It was tearing a hole. Malcolm woke up on the cold metal floor of his lab. His first thought was relief. The experiment hadn't destroyed anything. His machine stood intact. His console still flickered with soft light, and the world hadn't collapsed into chaos. But the longer he stood there, the more something felt off. His body was heavy. It was not like exhaustion, but as if the air itself pressed against him. There was a faint vibration in his fingertips when he touched his console, like the metal carried some unseen energy. He ignored it. He needed to focus. The data was wrong. The numbers were off. They weren't broken, but they weren't behaving as expected either. The energy readings fluctuated within impossible ranges, like something beneath the surface was shifting too quickly for his instruments to catch. Still, he pushed it aside. He stepped outside, into the city. His city. Nothing had changed. The streets stretched before him, the neon signs buzzing softly, the air thick with the familiar scent of coffee from the cafe across the road. Yet, as he walked, he felt the difference before he could pinpoint it. The world was too smooth. Footsteps landed just a fraction of a second too late. The breeze curled through the streets without moving a single leaf. A cat leapt onto a windowsill, and for half a second, Malcolm could swear it didn't touch the ground at all. It was like reality had been polished, cleaned of imperfections. Then he saw the fire. A vendor stood over a cooking station. The flames flickered unnaturally, swaying against the wind as though they had their own instincts. Malcolm stopped, stared. The vendor caught his gaze and smiled. "Wind's playful today." Playful? Malcolm felt his pulse quicken. The fire should not do that. The wind should not feel aware. People moved as if nothing was wrong, interacting with their world, a world that Malcolm was beginning to realize was very much not his own. Malcolm spent the next day cataloging inconsistencies. Objects moving without force applied, the air carrying a hum that never dissipated, dancing flames that ignored the wind. Yet, the people didn't seem to notice. They lived as though this was normal. That was what unsettled him most. It meant one of two things. Either he was hallucinating, or the laws of physics had been replaced. He needed answers. And that was when they found him. Two figures stepped into his lab. They were tall, and cloaked in flowing fabrics that shimmered like the air itself. The way they moved was unsettling, precise yet fluid, as if reality bent to accommodate their presence rather than the other way around. Malcolm stiffened. His instinct screamed that these were not ordinary people. "We've been watching you." One said, their voice smooth but firm. Malcolm exhaled slowly. Who are you? The Arbiter's Guild, the figure replied. We regulate the balance of magic in this universe. Magic? A governing authority dedicated to magic. Malcolm's mind raced. That confirmed everything. Magic here wasn't just tolerated, it was enforced. You do not belong here, the second figure stated. Their tone wasn't hostile, just matter of fact. Malcolm narrowed his eyes. What makes you think that? The first arbiter stepped closer, studying him. You disrupt. Malcolm frowned. Disrupt what? The flow, the balance. The laws beneath the surface, the arbiter explained. Magic reacts to all things, even those unaware of its presence. But with you it resists. It stutters. It questions. The elements do not recognize you. Malcolm inhaled sharply. He thought back to all the strange occurrences he had observed. The delay in his footsteps, the unnatural way the air vibrated, and the way fire seemed hesitant around him. He had assumed he was simply observing anomalies. But he wasn't just seeing them. He was causing them. Then how do I leave? Malcolm asked. The arbiter's expression remained unreadable. That is not the question. Malcolm's patience thinned. It's the only question that matters to me. The second arbiter folded their hands. You are welcome to leave, but you may not take magic with you. Malcolm narrowed his eyes. I don't want magic. I want to return things to normal. You misunderstand, the arbiter replied. You have already taken magic with you. Malcolm felt his breath hitch. The realization came slowly but undeniably. It wasn't just that magic ignored him. It was that magic was reacting to him. He wasn't just an outsider. He was a disturbance, an unpredictable force that the natural magic of this world was struggling to categorize. The arbiter stepped back. If you leave, if you cross through the veil and return to your world, you must be certain that magic does not travel with you. Malcolm clenched his fists. That meant one thing. He had to find a way back without altering reality. And that was going to be a problem. Malcolm wasn't the type to take things at face value. If magic truly existed in this world, then it had to follow rules. Even if those rules were unwritten or hidden beneath layers of perception. And Elara? She was the exact opposite. She treated magic like breathing. Effortless. Instinctual. Something that simply was. The first time Malcolm saw her, there was something off about the moment, but not in the way that had unsettled him before. It wasn't just the way she effortlessly wove through the crowded marketplace, how she didn't pause when the floating lanterns above flickered in response to her presence. It was how she held herself, how reality seemed to organize itself around her, rather than her affecting it. It was subtle, unspoken, but Malcolm noticed it immediately. He found her while studying an object that seemed to react before it was touched. A simple wooden chest in the marketplace. Yet every time someone reached for it, it opened on its own, anticipating the action. He spent nearly half an hour watching people interact with it, testing different approaches, noting the delay patterns, calculating variables. That was when Elara noticed him. You're staring at that box like it just insulted your mother. Her voice was low, smooth, laced with quiet amusement. Malcolm snapped his head toward her. She stood with one hip cocked, arms crossed, studying him, not just with curiosity, but with something closer to recognition, as if she already knew exactly what kind of person he was. It moves before it's touched, he said. There's no mechanism, no pressure sensors. The reaction time is consistent, but unexplained. Elara lifted a brow. It's enchanted. Malcolm's jaw tensed. Enchantment doesn't explain how it works. She smirked. Doesn't matter. Malcolm exhaled slowly, trying to keep his frustration in check. Everything follows rules, even magic. Elara stepped forward, reaching for the chest, and sure enough, it opened before her fingers touched it. Unlike Malcolm, she didn't hesitate. She simply grabbed what she needed and walked away, entirely unconcerned. His stare followed her, his pulse ticking faster than it should. She was beautiful, but not in a way that was easily categorized. It wasn't just her sharp, knowing gaze or the effortless grace in her movement. It was the way the world responded to her, the way magic bent toward her the same way his curiosity did. That was more unsettling than anything else. Malcolm clenched his fists. She doesn't even question it. And that was when he knew that if he wanted answers, he had to learn from her. Malcolm had never struggled with learning before. Everything in his life, Science, logic, knowledge had followed a pattern, a formula, a method. But here, nothing fit into his carefully structured framework. And worse, Elara wasn't even trying to explain it. She led him through the winding streets of the city, effortlessly interacting with the world as though reality itself bent to accommodate her presence. Magic gravitated toward her, responding to her thoughts without hesitation. Malcolm hated it, because it meant that she understood something he didn't. "I need structure," he said, watching her suspend droplets of water in the air like tiny stars. "There has to be a system, a formula." Elara tilted her head, amused. "You can't write magic into an equation." Malcolm exhaled sharply, struggling to keep his frustration in check. "Everything is rules." She smirked. "Then tell me, what are the rules of breathing?" Malcolm opened his mouth, then hesitated. "You don't think about it, do you?" she said. "You just do it. Magic works the same way." Malcolm frowned. "That's absurd." Elara's expression softened. "Is it?" Her gaze held something deeper, something that unnerved Malcolm more than her words. It wasn't just that she moved through this world so effortlessly. It was the way she looked at him, as if she already knew how this would end, as if she had seen enough people try to resist magic before finally surrendering to it. Malcolm wasn't sure why that unsettled him so much. It wasn't just magic he was struggling with. It was her. Every moment with her was too charged, too alive. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met, and that alone made her impossible to ignore. Frustration gnawed at him. Every experiment failed. Every attempt to predict the laws of magic collapsed under its own unpredictability. It wasn't until Elara forced him to stop thinking that everything changed. She stood before him one evening, hands on her hips, eyes steady. "Forget the calculations. Just listen." Listen." Malcolm inhaled sharply. And then, for the first time, he truly felt the magic. The air hummed. The fire pulsed. The water swayed in invisible currents. There was a rhythm to it, a logic, but one deeper than equations. Elara smiled. "You're starting to understand." Malcolm clenched his fists. Because she was right, and that terrified him more than anything else. Malcolm hadn't planned for this. For all his calculations, all his theories, all his relentless pursuit of knowledge, he had never accounted for her. Elara represented the concept of magic in this world, characterized by fluidity, instinct, and an elusive nature that defied rational explanation. But more than that, she had become his tether, the thing holding him in place when he wasn't sure if this universe wanted him here at all. Days blurred into nights, and, somehow, he had stopped studying magic and started living it. Or maybe, living with her. It was in the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. The way she'd tilt her head, watching him scribble theories into his notebook. A quiet smirk tugging at her lips, as if she knew something he didn't. The way she corrected him, not with logic, but with laughter. "You think too much," she told him one evening, leaning against the balcony railing, firelight dancing in the distance. "That's the only way I know how to live," Malcolm had replied. Elara had hummed softly. "Then I hope you plan on living a very long time. You still have too much to learn." Malcolm had opened his mouth to deliver a quippy retort, but something stopped him. The way the light caught in her eyes. The way the breeze curled around her like it was meant for her. The way he felt something in his chest tighten, sharp and undeniable. He was in trouble, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to fight it. It was in the way magic no longer resisted him. The elements didn't shudder under his presence anymore. They didn't recoil like they had when he first arrived. Magic had adapted to him, or maybe he had adapted to magic. There was the problem of what happened when he left. Would magic follow him? Would he disturb the balance of his own universe in ways he couldn't predict? Would he be the one changed, so fundamentally altered that going home would never feel right again? Malcolm hadn't voiced these thoughts, but Elara knew. She always knew. One night, as they walked through the empty streets, she finally said it. "You stopped talking about leaving." Malcolm's breath hitched. He wanted to argue, to correct her, to tell her that his research wasn't finished, that he hadn't figured out the last variables yet. But instead, he simply said, "I know." Elara didn't ask him for an answer, because she already knew he didn't have one. When he knew, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some grand realization with lightning flashing across the sky, or a life-threatening moment forcing him to confront his feelings. It was simple. It happened when she fell asleep beside him at his desk, her hair sprawled across his notes, the faint glow of enchantment still dancing along her fingertips. It was when she woke up, looking at him with sleepy eyes, and simply smiled. And Malcolm thought, how am I supposed to leave her? How do I reconcile knowing my world isn't hers? Knowing that my universe isn't meant for her? Knowing that no matter how much magic has come to accept him, his home doesn't have magic at all? And that was the real problem. Because now, it wasn't just about going back. It was about deciding if leaving was even an option anymore because he was in love with her. Magic had rules. Malcolm knew that now. It had taken weeks, months even, of relentless study. Every anomaly, every flicker of uncontrolled energy, every moment of Elara's effortless magic had become data. He recorded everything because patterns had emerged. Magic wasn't some chaotic force defying physics. It was physics, just governed by different principles. But understanding those principles wasn't enough. Malcolm wanted proof. Elara had laughed when he told her. You spent all this time trying to prove magic makes sense, she teased, stretching lazily in the sunlight, watching him scribble out equations on parchment like a man possessed. Malcolm didn't bother answering. He was too focused. Magic had a response mechanism. It wasn't arbitrary. It obeyed intention, and beyond intention, there are laws. Laws unseen to the untrained eye, but undeniably present. And that meant one thing. Magic wasn't just instinct. It could be learned. Malcolm refined his results with ruthless precision. Magic wasn't scattered. It had pathways, energy currents running through the land, invisible veins of power that dictated where the spells were strongest. Unlike scientific forces, magic reacted to thought. It responded not just to spoken words, but to subconscious desires. It responded to intent. The longer someone used magic, the more attuned they became. Their presence influencing spells even before they were cast. Almost like magical memory. That last realization unsettled him the most. Magic wasn't just something people controlled. It was something that learned them, and Malcolm, the outsider, was slowly becoming part of its memory. For every equation Malcolm wrote, Elara rolled her eyes. You don't have to understand magic to use it, she said one evening, effortlessly shaping a flame between her fingertips. Malcolm frowned. Then how do you control it? She smirked. I don't control it. I move with it. He clenched his fists. That's the same thing. She gave him a look, one of quiet amusement, laced with something dangerously close to affection. No, Malcolm, she said gently. It's not. He hated that she could just do things without questioning them. But what unsettled him more was the fact that she was right. He knew the Arbiters Guild was still watching him. Their visits were no longer formal. No longer just warnings. Now, when Malcolm walked through the city, he felt their presence before he saw them. When he practiced magic, because yes, he was practicing now, they were always nearby. You are tampering with forces beyond your comprehension, one of them told him, appearing in the doorway of his lab. Malcolm met their gaze evenly. No, I am understanding them. The Arbiter studied him. And what happens when you try to leave with that knowledge? Malcolm hesitated. They knew. They knew he was preparing to leave. And they knew he was dangerously close to understanding magic well enough to disrupt the balance between worlds. You can't take magic with you, the Arbiter warned. Malcolm said nothing, because he had already realized that he didn't want to leave without Elara. Malcolm stood before the portal, staring into the swirling void that should have been his salvation. His machine hummed softly, the energy rings spinning at precise intervals. Controlled. Calculated. Perfect. He could leave. The Arbiters had made their conditions clear. Magic cannot follow. That should have been simple. Malcolm wasn't magic. He wasn't bound to the forces of this world the way Elara was. Except, he was. Magic had adapted to him. It recognized him now. And more than that, it had given him her. Elara stood behind him, silent. She hadn't told him to stay. She hadn't begged him to reconsider. But her presence alone was enough to destroy him. Because leaving meant losing her, and losing her meant losing everything this world had given him. Not just magic, but life beyond science, beyond structure, beyond reason. Would you regret it? Her voice was soft, steady, but it cut through him like lightning. Malcolm swallowed hard. Regret what? Elara stepped closer, standing just at the edge of the portal's light. Going back. Pretending this never happened. erasing all of this. Malcolm clenched his fists. That was the problem, wasn't it? Once, leaving it seemed obvious. Necessary. He had a life, a career, a universe that still needed him. But now? After her? After this? How was he supposed to go back to a world where magic didn't exist? Where she didn't exist? His throat tightened. I don't know. Elara tilted her head, studying him, something unreadable flickering in her gaze. Then, she said the words that shattered him completely. You could stay. She didn't mean it lightly. She wasn't offering him a simple choice. She was giving him a life that didn't include scientific accolades, university lectures, and equations scribbled on chalkboards. A life that included her. Malcolm felt his pulse hammer against his skin. He was a man of reason, of logic, of certainty. But this wasn't something he could quantify. Elara reached forward, fingers brushing his wrist. Malcolm realized, with quiet devastation, that magic wasn't the only thing keeping him here. It was her. And suddenly, everything else felt irrelevant. Malcolm stepped back from the portal. Slowly, deliberately. His machine flickered, the energy humming softly, waiting, offering him an escape, and he let it go. The rings began to slow, the dimensional current fading. The portal closed, and Malcolm, scientist, the skeptic, the man of reason, turned to Elara, who simply smiled, because she had known the answer long before he did. Malcolm had expected change. He had anticipated some shift, some alteration in himself. He had known, on some level, that staying would mean more than just living in this world. But he hadn't expected this. The morning after the portal closed, Malcolm woke with a strange sensation. Not pain, not instability, but a quiet hum beneath his skin. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't anxiety. It was something deeper. When he reached for his notebook on the desk, it slid toward his hand before he touched it. Just like the enchanted objects in the marketplace. Just like magic responding to its users. Magic had finally recognized him. Malcolm inhaled sharply, staring at his hand as if it had betrayed him. He flexed his fingers, testing his grip. His movements felt too smooth, too controlled, as though something unseen had adjusted his very existence to fit the laws of this world. He was no longer just an outsider looking in. He was a part of it now. And that meant one devastating truth. There was no going back. You have made your choice, the lead arbiter said, standing in the doorway of his lab, their presence heavier than before. Malcolm straightened, pulse ticking faster. I have. The arbiter studied him, with an unervingly sharp gaze. Magic has accepted you. Malcolm clenched his fists. I haven't lost myself. The arbiter tilted their head. Haven't you? Malcolm swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to insist that he was still himself, that he hadn't abandoned the foundations of his identity. But he knew. He was different, and the arbiters knew it too. You will never function in your old world the way you once did. The arbiter continued. Magic remembers those who embrace it. It does not forget. Malcolm inhaled sharply. What are you saying? The arbiter's expression didn't waver. Even if he could go back, magic would follow. Malcolm felt the weight of those words settle deep in his chest. It wasn't just about choosing to stay. It was about never being able to leave at all. Elara found him later that evening, standing on the balcony, staring into the horizon like he was searching for something that no longer existed. She didn't speak at first, just stood beside him, letting the silence stretch between them until it became something tangible. Then, finally, she said softly, You didn't lose anything, Malcolm. Malcolm exhaled slowly. How do you know? Elara turned to him, her eyes steady. Because magic didn't take anything from you. It gave you something new. Elara put her arms around him, and Malcolm closed his eyes, absorbing the weight of those words. He hadn't lost his world. He had just gained a new one, and now he had to live with that choice.